Okay, I'd just like to talk about how you fit Barkbusters to your Suzuki. It's actually something quite interesting I've discovered and probably worth sharing. So here's your standard Suzuki VPS Barkbuster. The VPS part's the front. I've attached the extension on the back, and you get your standard alloy protection bar. And I've installed a side scratch bar there as well. So what happens is you've got a couple of fittings. You've got this on your handlebar end. It's a expansion joint, and basically screw through, pulls in, and it jams into your 7/8 inch handlebars. And then on your other end you get your standard handlebar 7/8 inch handlebar mount, and your extension bar and the screw. Now there's also a couple of other things that you can get. You can get spacers, and you can get longer extension bars, or you could get longer extension bars, but I've noticed they're no longer now showing on the Barkbuster site. So anyway, we'll get to that later. So the interesting thing here is, if you look at the Barkbuster, it's got two mounting points obviously. It's got the one on your handlebar end and the mounting point on your on the handlebar itself. So if you think this is the handlebar end, the expansion piece obviously fits at 90 degrees into your handlebar, and then your alloy bar goes across. And so what sets the difference is basically the setback of your handlebar. So if this end is your handlebar clamp, and this end is your handlebar end, and then the setback of your handlebar determines how big your spacer should be. Now with Suzuki, they give you this spacer here, and they may also give you this 10mm spacer as a default, but I'm not 100% sure. So when you set this up on your handlebar, theoretically it should fit like that. So it all depends on what the setback is from the hole here to the hole there. And if your handlebar has got a different setback, then obviously that space will be different. I'll show you why in a minute. It's actually quite interesting. Okay, let's go over to the bike, and I'll show you how it's supposed to be set up. Okay, so here we are at the bike end. You can see here though, that slots directly into the handlebar. So it needs to sit nice and tight and perpendicular to the bar, or 90 degrees to the bar. So if it sits at an angle, you'll notice on your Suzuki it'll have a space in it like that, or maybe a space in it like that. So it has to sit straight in and tight. And I've lined this up with the end of the knuckle there. So the interesting thing is, if you go at the other end, so that's all square, this is the other end where the spacer's supposed to fit. And if I line that up, you can see there's no way that spacer can fit your Barkbuster, and the only way you can fit it is to push it that way towards the extension bar, which then leaves you with that little gap at that end. So again, if you move it tight and square, you can see there how you need a little bit more on your extension bar if it's to actually fit. Now, Barkbusters actually have a couple of solutions to this. They have spacers, which you can put in there. They sell spacers and bolts. Or they used to do that 55mm extension, but they don't seem to do that anymore. So I think what they've done is basically go to spacers. So if I go and put now my 65mm extension in the handlebar clamp end, then we can have a look what that looks like. So you can see what I'm talking about here. That's the 65mm extension piece. That's the standard extension piece there, and that's 45mm. You can maybe see in there it's 20mm difference. That's a 10mm spacer piece that they do supply. I think they do these in 10, 15s and 20. So you can see there how you can adjust your extension away from the handlebars as required. So I've got standard Suzuki handlebars. So if you've got a different handlebar with a different setback, you'll need to work out how far you need to add onto your standard extension bar. It might not be the full 20 you need. The standard handlebar looks like it needs the full 20. And then there's a standard bolt without a spacer. And as you can see there, the standard bolt without the spacer is basically the same length outside as the threads outside the spacer. So you've got the 65mm extension bar, and they used to do these in different 55s and 65s, I think. And they might have even done 50s, but I can't see them on the website anymore. So what I think they've done is they've replaced the extension bar with the spacers, and so now you just have to put spacers in. And so that's all the little bits and pieces that you need. So I'm going to use the 65 extension bar, but I'm not sure you can get them anymore. And I'm going to use not 10mm but 7mm spacers in the handlebar ends, and then we can finish off the Barkbuster fitment, and I'll show you how it's a lot better fitment than the standard. Okay, so as you can see here, I've put the 65mm extension in, and let's line it all up again. So this has to sit perpendicular to the bar. It's lined up with the knuckle. And then what happens on this end, up, the 65mm extension fits it, and it's nice and square at the back of the handlebar here. So you can see there the standard short extension bar that Barkbusters give you don't actually allow you to have a good fitment of your Barkbuster handguard. So I've used the 65mm one, which I said I don't think they do anymore, so you might have to buy a spacer. Now there is one other little trick here to fit in Barkbusters, and I'll start with this end. You can see there, when it's all lined up, the brake lever actually has plenty of room. So the brake lever on the Barkbusters side has got plenty of room. But let's now look at the other side. So here's the Barkbusters clutch side. So if we have the handlebar perpendicular at the end, you can see there if it's not perpendicular you start to get gaps open up. So if it's perpendicular at the end and nice and tight, when the clutch comes back, it actually hits the Barkbuster handguard. So the problem you have with the clutch side on Barkbusters is the clutch seems to be further to the left than the brake seems to be to the right, if that makes sense. So what you actually have to do is put a little spacer in here. Now Barkbusters used to do 7mm spacers, which I have got. They now do 10mm spacers, so there's a 3mm difference, so it's not a great deal of difference. But I found that the 7mm spacers give you enough room in here that the clutch lever actually clears the Barkbuster and allows for that tight perpendicular fit. So what I'm going to do is fit the 7mm spacers to both sides, and then we can finish off the rest of the Barkbuster fitment. So here we have all the bits that I'm going to fit now to make the Barkbuster a perfect fit. This was the 65mm clamp connection piece, and this is the 7mm spacer. So here I've also bought a Barkbuster bar end weight, and it comes with a long screw. It comes with 3 screws. I would recommend fitting the longest one. So what you do is the Barkbuster handlebar clamp piece. That's the first piece to go in. So you can see there's a chamfer or a recess under the bar end piece. So that goes on there. And then the 7mm goes at the back. The Barkbuster bar end weight goes through. And so you've got your 7mm then, and then you've got your clamp piece, and then you've got your little collet or expansion piece, whatever you want to call it. So that goes in there. Then you've got a 5mm Allen key. You've got a 5mm Allen key, and then it all bolts together. So what I'll do is I'll just tighten this up slightly so that we can take it across to the bike, and then we'll put this in, and I'll show you how the 65mm piece then makes it a perfect fit. I also forgot to mention, if you look closely here, you can see a slot. Potentially you can see a slot, and the expansion piece has 2 small edges on it. So if you wait there, I'll get there. So here's the one from the other side. You can see here how it's got a small edge, and what that does is it fits into the underneath slot. So the one underneath makes sure it engages with that slot, because it stops it turning when you tighten up the Allen key. Okay, good. Let's go across the bike now. So this is quite tight now, just before I go across. So I've tightened it up with a 5mm key, and it's a little bit tight, but not overly tight that it's started to expand the joint. So it's tight enough to hold it, but not tight enough to expand the over joint. So let's go across to the bike and finish up the tightening up. Okay, so here we have the Barkbuster ready to fit into the bike. So the goes straight into the handlebar, and you want it to sit nice and flush with the handlebar. So as I said previously, if it's sitting at an angle like that with a slight space, it's wrong. If it's sitting, so you want it tight in and flush in parallel with the handlebar, and then we can start to tighten it up. So if I hold that now, get my 5mm Allen wrench, and then just start to turn it till it starts to take. And it's quite tight till it, there you go, doesn't take many turns. And that's in nice and tight. Just get it aligned with, I think I called that the knuckle previously, but probably the proper terminology is the ball. So I want it lined up with the ball, because if I go down, I want to protect my lever. So you can see there, that's holding by itself, so that's perfectly parallel, and that's the lever aligned with the end. And I'll just give it a little bit of a tighten just to finish that off. So basically what we have now is we have a Barkbuster ready for the clamp connector, or the extension piece as I probably call it. So that's nicely lined up and protecting that. That's parallel with the bar with no gaps, and you can see there how the 7mm spacer works quite well. And And now I'll connect the clamp connector, and you can see how that fits perfectly. So there's the 65mm clamp connector fitted. What I've done is I've fitted the Allen key on the top here because it's got good access, and I've fitted the Allen key on the bottom there because you'll be against the bar if you've got the standard bar, so you can get the Allen key at the bottom. And if you notice here, if I take the 65, I hope this works. If you take the 65mm connector, you can see there, this is sitting flush and well connected, and the 65mm connector connects essentially perfectly with the bar. So if you use your standard 45mm connector, you have to add on another 20mm to make it a perfect fit. And you can see there you've got a nice space as well between the brake connection, the brake lever, and the brake works quite nice over here. Okay, so let's see if I can do this with one hand. Just put that in, get the 65mm connector in. One-handed operation is not the easiest thing. There we go. Get my 5mm Allen key and screw it up. So that's nice and tight. That's perfectly aligned there. And so that is looking really good. You can see there how that connector works perfectly. It's all lined up, it's all tight, nothing's under tension, and now I can go ahead and just tighten it all up, and you've got a perfectly fitting Barkbuster with a 7mm spacer here and a 65mm extension piece there. But as I said, I don't think they do these anymore, so you'll have to go 45 and 20. Let's do the other side now, and that's us all looking good. So there's the clutch side installed, exactly the same procedure. 7mm spacer, Barkbuster standard 7/8" expansion joint, the weight on the end, 5mm socket, 5mm Allen key. I've lined it up with the center of the bar to protect the lever when if I go down, and then the 65mm extension joint fits perfectly again, and that's just perfect there how it sits. Also, a little hint when you're tightening it up: tighten the extension bolt up first until it clamps down on the extension bar, and that'll stop vertical movement on the extension bar. So clamp the front first and then tighten up the back. Otherwise you could find your extension bars flapping about on the nut. So clamp the handlebar clamp to the extension bar first so it stops it moving, and then tighten up the back piece, and that'll stop the front piece moving. And if you look here, the clutch lever is a perfect fit for that 7mm spacer, which is sufficient. 10mm would be okay as well, but 7mm is just perfect for that clutch. As I said, the clutch seems to go further than the brake over the handlebars, so that works perfectly. And you can't move the clutch back because it fits over the handlebar, if you see there. So if you try and move the clutch that way, you'll interfere with your housing. So you have to leave it where it is and put a spacer on the handlebar. And that is absolutely perfect. And so that's how you fit your Barkbusters to fit perfectly to DR650. And as I said, this is for the standard bars. So I've got the standard bars on this 650. If you fit fat bars, you have to fit different handlebar clamps. So your handlebar clamps here would have to be different. and if you change your handlebar clamps, it may change the spacer there. But again, it depends on the how far back your bars come. So the sweep of your bars, the position of your bars up and down, all changes your geometry. And so really what you have to do is you have to do a dry fit on the end, then measure the distance, put the correct spacer in, and then everything fits perfectly. You can see there, that's even better than I thought it would be. There's no space at all between the spacers and the handlebar, and that all fits just perfect. I'm very pleased with that. And so that's it. That's how you fit your Barkbusters to your DR650. So good luck. I hope this has helped somebody. If it's helped out there, make a comment. And if you've got any other suggestions, feel free to get back to me. I thought about putting an equation in for calculating the size of this spacer, but it gets a bit complicated with the sweep of the bars and the angle of the bars and everything else. So I thought I'd just leave it as a final measurement you can do yourself. Hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your DR650.